My wife's voice cut through our kitchen like a blade hitting steel. Apologize to my son right now, Wade, or we're getting a divorce. The words hit me so hard, I felt them in my bones. Melissa stood by the sink with her arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes bright with that stubborn shine she got when she decided she was right and the world could just adjust. Behind her, the under-cabinet lights threw a harsh glow on the countertop clutter. Kroger bags, a half-open bag of chips. My pill organizer sitting where it always sat like a quiet reminder I wasn't 30 anymore. And there was Tyler, her son, 29 years old, still wearing his backward cap indoors like the house was some college dorm, leaning in the hallway with his shoulders against the doorframe. He wasn't even pretending to be sorry. He wore that little smirk like he already knew how this ended. Like he'd watched Melissa do this to people before. They were waiting for the old Wade, the one who swallowed it for peace, the one who fixed the furnace and kept his mouth shut, the one who paid the bills and acted like the disrespect was just noise. The air got thick, not poetic thick, real thick. The kind where you feel your work shirt stick to your back and your lungs don't want to pull in a full breath. The refrigerator hummed. The wall clock over the microwave ticked like it had something to prove. I stared straight at my wife, the woman I'd married 8 years ago at St. Mary's in downtown Akron, where the priest mispronounced my middle name, and we laughed about it later in the parking lot. The woman who used to hold my hand at the Union Fish Fry when the line got long. The woman who once cried in my pickup because she was terrified her boy would never come home. Now she was yelling at me like I was some punk apprentice who'd screwed up a weld. "Wade," she snapped again, louder. "You heard me." I didn't look away. I didn't blink first. I just let the silence hang there until Tyler's smirk twitched like he was getting bored. In the back of my head, like a voice from a different life, I heard my dad, Clay Coleman, born and raised in Barberton. The kind of man who could fix a blast furnace with duct tape and determination. A man who begs today pays forever. My jaw tightened. I felt the ache in my left shoulder, where 25 years of overhead welding had been chewing at the joint. Like even my body was tired of holding things together. I glanced past Melissa, right at Tyler. He'd moved back into our house 4 months earlier, just for a little while, after he got fired from his landscaping job in Canton. That's what Melissa said anyway. Tyler's version changed depending on who was listening. Sometimes he was laid off. Sometimes it was toxic management. Once I heard him tell a buddy on speakerphone that he quit because he refused to work for idiots. What I knew was this. He came home with 2 duffel bags, a PlayStation, and an attitude big enough to fill our whole ranch-style house on Firestone Boulevard. And the longer he stayed, the smaller Melissa became. Smaller in her courage, smaller in her honesty, until everything in our home started orbiting around Tyler's moods. If he slammed a door, dinner went quiet. If he rolled his eyes, Melissa apologized to him like he was the wounded one. If he wanted cash for gas, she reached for her purse without question. Tonight had started like any other December evening. Ohio, cold pressing against the windows, the furnace running steady. Me, still in my work boots, smelling like metal and welding flux from Allied Steelworks. I'd come home hoping for meatloaf and the evening news. Instead, I walked into Tyler, laughing at something on his phone, while Melissa sat at the table with a stack of mail. One envelope was open. My name was on it. The logo of First National Bank stared up at me like an accusation. "What's that?" I asked. Melissa didn't look at me. "Bank statements." Tyler snorted. "He's acting like he doesn't already know he's broke." I stopped. "Excuse me?" Tyler stood up slow, like he was in some movie. "I said you're acting like you don't know. You're always on my mom about money, like you're some hero because you pay the bills." Melissa finally looked up then, and the look on her face wasn't apology. It was warning, like I was the problem for poking the bear she'd been feeding. "Tyler," she said softly. But there was no bite to it. He leaned forward, hands on the table. "You know what, Wade? I'm tired of you acting like you own everything. This isn't your little factory. This is my mom's house, too. And you?" He glanced at the framed photo in the hallway. My dad in a flannel shirt, holding a crappie at George Washington Carver Lake. Tyler's lip curled. "Stop waving your dead old man around like a badge. He's gone, and you're still just some welder. That's what did it. Not the insult to me. I've had foremen talk worse during night shifts when equipment breaks down and deadlines loom. I can take a hit. But my dad was the kind of man who never raised his hand to anyone and still taught half the county what decency looked like. My dad didn't deserve Tyler's mouth. I stepped closer. "Don't talk about my father." Tyler's eyes flashed. "Or what?" Melissa shot up from the chair, palms out like she was breaking up a bar fight. "Wade, stop. Please, just stop." "He started it," I said, and I hated how my voice sounded. Tired, rough, older than I felt inside. Melissa turned on me, and that's when she went for the nuclear option. "Apologize to my son," she yelled, "or we're getting a divorce." Like the last 8 years could be reduced to a switch she could flip to keep Tyler comfortable. And now, here we were. Kitchen lights too bright, hearts too loud. Tyler smirking in the hallway like he'd already won. Melissa's nostrils flared. "Say it." Tyler folded his arms, still smiling. "Go ahead, Wade. Tell me. You're sorry." I looked at my wife again. I searched her face for the woman I married, for the one who once told me, "I just want a peaceful home," for the one who promised me we'd be partners. What I saw was someone standing between me and her son, choosing him again without even realizing she was doing it. I didn't shout. I didn't slam anything. I didn't give Tyler the satisfaction of seeing me crack. I just said the only true thing left in my mouth. "I'm done here." Melissa blinked like she hadn't processed the English language. "What?" I turned, walked to the coat rack, and grabbed my old brown Carhartt jacket. My keys were on the hook. I took them. I picked up my duffel bag from the closet, half packed from a work trip that never happened, like the universe knew. "Wade!" Melissa called, voice climbing. "Don't you dare just—" I paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. Tyler's smirk faltered just a hair, like he realized the game might be changing. I didn't give them another word. Outside, the cold slapped my face clean. The porch light made the snow sparkle like broken glass. My breath came out in a white cloud. I walked to my truck, climbed in, and shut the door. The cab smelled like stale coffee and welding leather, comforting in a way. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at our living room window where the curtains shifted as someone moved inside. Then my phone buzzed. Melissa. I didn't answer. I put the truck in reverse and backed out slow, tires crunching on snow. As I drove toward town, past the dark outlines of industrial buildings sleeping under winter, one thought settled in my chest like a stone. Heavy, steady. Sure. That night, sitting in my truck under the neon glow of Murphy's Tavern parking lot, I realized something they hadn't. I did have somewhere to go. I just hadn't gone there yet. I didn't sleep much that night. Lance's couch was old and sunken in the middle, the kind that remembers every steel worker who's ever crashed on it. The furnace clicked on and off with a wheeze that reminded me of my own knees on cold mornings. Somewhere outside, a semi downshifted on Route 8, the sound stretching through the dark like a long sigh. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, watching it wobble, thinking about the way Melissa's face had hardened when she gave me that ultimatum. Not angry hard, certain hard, like she truly believed I'd fold. By 5 a.m, I gave up on sleep and sat at Lance's kitchen table with a mug of coffee that tasted like it had been reheated too many times. The local news murmured on his small TV. Snow totals, school delays, nothing about a 55-year-old man who just walked out of his own house with a duffel bag and his pride intact. Lance came in wearing a faded Browns hoodie and rubbed his eyes. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel worse," I answered. He poured himself coffee and didn't push. That's what I appreciated about Lance. He knew when to let silence do the talking. My phone buzzed on the table. Melissa. I didn't touch it. Another buzz, then another. Lance glanced at the phone, then back at me. "You going to answer that?" "Not yet." He nodded once. Smart. By mid-morning, the messages started coming in. Melissa, 7:42 a.m. "We need to talk." Melissa, 8:03 a.m. "You embarrassed Tyler last night." Melissa, 8:17 a.m. "I can't believe you just walked out like that." There was no, "Are you okay?" No, "Where did you go?" Just accusations wrapped in concern, the way Melissa had learned to do things when it came to her son. Around 10, a new message popped up. Melissa, 10:11 a.m. "If you don't come home, I'll have to talk to a lawyer." I stared at that one for a long time. Lawyer. The word sat heavy like a door slamming somewhere in the distance. Lance leaned against the counter. "You hungry?" "Not really." Too bad. He slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of me. Eat. Decisions are worse on an empty stomach. I forced a few bites down. My chest felt tight, not from hunger, but from something else. Fear, maybe. Or the slow realization that this wasn't just a fight. This was a line. While Lance rinsed dishes, my mind drifted back to a different time, a softer one. Melissa and I hadn't always been like this. When we first got married, Tyler was 21 and living 3 states away. He'd left in a hurry after a blow-up with Melissa that left her shaking on the couch, mascara streaked, convinced she'd lost him forever. I remembered that night clearly. Melissa had sat in my truck in the Walmart parking lot, gripping the seatbelt with both hands like it was the only thing holding her upright. I failed him, she whispered. I pushed too hard. He'll never come back. I'd reached over and taken her hand. Kids come back, I said, especially when they know there's still a place for them. A year later, Tyler did come back for Thanksgiving, then for Christmas. And when he finally moved home again, I was the one who said, let's give him a chance. I was the one who cleaned out the spare room. I was the one who told Melissa, he just needs time. That memory stung now, like pressing on a bruise you didn't know you had. By noon, I found myself holding my phone, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I'm sorry, let's talk. The words sat there, typed out, glowing softly on the screen. For a moment, I imagined driving back, apologizing, swallowing my pride for the sake of the marriage, sitting across from Tyler at the kitchen table while he smirked and pretended to forgive me. Peace at any price. My thumb hovered over send. Then Lance spoke, his voice casual but sharp enough to cut through my thoughts. You know my buddy Steve? He said. I looked up. The guy from Cleveland? Yeah, same age as us. Wife gave him an ultimatum like that once. He apologized, thought he was being the bigger man. Lance shook his head slowly. She learned something that day. What? That if she pushed hard enough, he'd cave. Took her 5 years to clean out his retirement and leave him with a rented room and a bad back. The room went quiet. I looked back at my phone. The words were still there. I'm sorry, let's talk. In my head, my father's voice came back clear, as if he were sitting across from me at that table, cap pulled low, hands wrapped around a mug. A man who begs today pays forever. I exhaled long and slow. Then I deleted the message. The screen went blank. Lance didn't smile. He just nodded once, like he'd seen this moment before and respected the weight of it. That afternoon, while Lance went out to run errands, I drove downtown to First National Bank. The building sat on the corner like it always had. Brick, sturdy, unpretentious. The kind of place that remembered your name if you'd been there long enough. Inside, the heat hit me along with the smell of old carpet and fresh coffee. A young teller smiled politely. I asked to see someone about asset protection documents. Name? She asked. Wade Coleman, I said. Account ending in 847. She typed, glanced at the screen, and her eyebrows lifted just a touch. One moment, Mr. Coleman. I sat in a chair near the window, watching cars crawl past on icy streets. My hands rested on my knees, steady now. Not calm, but focused. A man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses came out and shook my hand. Wade, haven't seen you in a while. I need copies of the asset protection paperwork from 6 years ago, I said. The full packet. He nodded. The ones from when you set up the trust? Yes. That'll take a few minutes, he said. You want coffee? I declined and waited. As I sat there, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not even resolve. Clarity. Melissa had always assumed I handled the boring stuff. Bills, paperwork, contracts. She signed where I pointed, trusted me to keep things running, and she'd never once asked what any of it meant. When the man returned with a folder thick enough to thump on the desk, I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. I didn't open it right away. I just rested my hand on the cover and thought about the way Melissa had looked at me in the kitchen, so sure I had nowhere to go. They assumed I'd come crawling back to save my marriage, my house, my credit. They were wrong about one thing, and that one thing was going to cost them everything. I opened the folder in my truck, not inside the bank. Some things deserve privacy. The papers smelled faintly of toner and old files, the way official documents always do. I spread them across the passenger seat, smoothing the corners with my palm like they might talk back if I handled them rough. There it was, The asset protection paperwork from 6 years earlier, the notary stamp, the signatures, mine neat and steady. Melissa's rushed and slanted, like she'd been thinking about something else. I remembered that afternoon clearly now. Melissa had been distracted. Tyler was having problems again, calling constantly, angry about something, convinced the world was unfair. She'd skimmed the documents while standing at the counter, pen tapping. "Is this all standard?" she'd asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just protection stuff." "Fine," she said, already half turned away. "You always handle this." That was true. I always did. Back then I'd listened to a quiet man at the bank, a gray-haired advisor who'd known my father, explain things slowly without drama. He talked about contingencies, about how second marriages sometimes got complicated, about how protecting assets wasn't about mistrust. It was about foresight. People don't plan to fall apart, he'd said. They just don't plan for when they do. At the time, I thought I was being careful, responsible. Now I realized I'd been building a door I never thought I'd walk through. The language was plain once you looked at it without fear. The house, the asset structure, the protections tied to accounts in my name, the safeguards that kicked in if shared funds were misused, or if someone attempted to leverage property without proper authorization. Nothing sneaky, nothing illegal, just thorough. I sat back in the truck and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I wasn't trapped. I drove back to Lance's place and spent the rest of the afternoon reading everything twice. I made notes in the margins with a pen Lance handed me, the ink scratching loud in the quiet room. I didn't feel clever. I felt sober. That night, Melissa called again. I watched the phone buzz across the coffee table like it was alive. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window. Snow fell slow and steady, covering tire tracks, erasing evidence. For the first time since walking out, I felt something close to solid under my feet. The next morning, I made an appointment with a local family attorney, someone whose name I'd heard at the Union Hall more than once. Not a shark, just steady. The kind of man who explained things in terms you could take home and sleep on. We sat in his small office above a hardware store downtown. He listened more than he talked, which I appreciated. When I was done, he leaned back and folded his hands. "You didn't set this up to hurt anyone," he said. "You set it up to protect yourself." I nodded. "Your wife," he continued, "made assumptions." "That seems to be the theme," I said. He almost smiled. By the time I left, the plan wasn't flashy. It wasn't revenge yet. It was just preparation. Quiet, legal, patient preparation. The way my dad used to do things. That afternoon, I checked my accounts. Everything was still intact. No alarms, no alerts, just numbers sitting where they had always sat. Then, late that evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Tyler's voice came through sharp and loud, like he was pacing when he called. "Hey, Wade," he said, dripping sarcasm. "We need to talk right now. There's some kind of issue with the accounts. Mom's freaking out. So if this is some kind of stunt, you made your point." Click. I stared at the screen. Stunt. 10 minutes later, another voicemail. Same number, different tone. "Okay, listen," Tyler said, slower now. "There's a misunderstanding. I was just trying to take care of a few things and suddenly nothing works. That's not normal. You need to fix this." I didn't move. An hour after that, my phone buzzed again. Melissa. This time, I answered. "Wade." Her voice was tight, controlled. "Something's wrong with the account." I leaned back in Lance's recliner and looked at the ceiling. "What kind of wrong?" "It's frozen," she said. "Tyler was trying to pay for something and it declined." "Pay for what?" There was a pause. "A truck," she said quietly. "A used Ford. He said it was a good deal." I closed my eyes. A truck. Of course it was. "And you didn't think to ask?" "Wade, please," she snapped, then softened. "This isn't the time. The bank called. They said they needed your authorization." I let the silence stretch, not to punish her, but to let the truth breathe. "I didn't authorize anything," I said. "Well, you need to," she replied, frustration creeping in. "This is ridiculous. We can't have accounts just locking up like this." "Melissa," I said, keeping my voice level, "your son tried to use shared funds without my consent." "He lives here," she said. "He's family." "So am I," I said. Another pause, this one heavier. "We'll talk about this when you come home," she said, the old certainty creeping back in. "I'm not coming home," I replied. The line went dead. Over the next 2 days, the calls came in waves. Tyler angry, then Tyler pleading, then Tyler pretending to be reasonable. Melissa left messages too. The first was clipped and demanding. The second was tight with worry. By the third day, her voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Wade," she whispered into the phone, "I don't understand what's happening. Please call me." I listened to each one once, then put the phone face down. I wasn't enjoying this. That surprised me. What I felt was something closer to relief. The chaos they had lived with, the shouting, the entitlement, the assumptions, had finally run into something solid. Not me yelling, not me threatening. Paper, time, truth. On the third evening, as the sun dropped behind the snow-covered roofs, I picked up my phone and typed a single message. "We'll talk publicly." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. As the screen dimmed, I thought about how strange it was that all of this, years of tension, months of resentment, one shouted ultimatum, was coming down to paperwork and patience. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg. I was just going to let the truth speak for itself, in front of everyone who mattered. The fourth day brought desperation. Tyler called 6 times before noon. The first 3 calls, I didn't answer. The fourth time, I picked up. "Wade, man, listen." His voice had lost the cocky edge. "I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. I wasn't trying to steal anything. It's just a truck for work, to get my life back together." "What work?" I asked. "Landscaping. I've got some leads on contracts. Good ones. But I need reliable transportation." $24,000 for reliable transportation? Silence. "Tyler, you've been unemployed for 4 months. You have no contracts. You have no business license. You have no equipment." I kept my voice calm, factual. "What you have is my wife's belief that I'll cave because keeping peace is more important than keeping respect." "It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You tried to spend money you didn't earn on a truck you can't afford for a business that doesn't exist. And when the bank stopped you, your first move was to call me an asshole." The line went quiet. "Your mother gave me an ultimatum," I continued. "She said apologize or divorce. You know what I chose? You want the account unfrozen? You can't apologize. Publicly. In front of everyone who matters." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I almost laughed. "You live rent-free in my house, eat food I pay for, and tried to steal my money. And you're talking to me about fair?" I hung up. Lance, who'd been listening from the kitchen, walked over with 2 cups of coffee. "Cold," he said. "What? Your tone? Cold as January." He handed me a cup. "I like it." That evening, the messages started coming faster. Melissa called twice, then Tyler, then Melissa again. Finally, around 9 o'clock, a text from an unknown number. "This is Tyler's friend Casey. He asked me to tell you he's sorry and wants to work things out. Can you call him?" I showed Lance the message. He read it and shook his head. Using his buddy as a messenger? Real mature. I deleted the text without responding. The next morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Melissa, voice shaking with something between rage and panic. "Wade, I've talked to a lawyer. You can't just lock us out of our own money. There are laws about this." "You're right," I said calmly. "There are laws, which is why everything I did was legal, which is also why everything Tyler tried to do triggered fraud alerts." "Fraud? That's insane. He's my son." Being someone's son doesn't give him the right to forge signatures on loan applications. The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. "What signatures?" she whispered. "The loan application for the truck. Tyler tried to sign my name. That's fraud, Melissa. Felony fraud." The silence stretched until I heard her breathing change. Fear, finally. Real fear. "I didn't know," she said. "That's the problem. You never asked. You just assumed I'd fix whatever mess he made. Wade, please. We can work this out. Just unlock the account and we'll sit down and we'll talk," I said, publicly, at the courthouse, with lawyers and witnesses and everyone who needs to see what really happened here. I hung up. 3 days later, the Summit County Family Court was fuller than I expected. Word had gotten around the way it does in a town like ours, through the Union Hall, the plant break room, Murphy's Tavern. When money and marriage and family loyalty all collide at once, people pay attention. I sat on the front bench in my best shirt, hands folded, watching Melissa and Tyler enter together, She wore a navy dress and makeup that couldn't quite hide the circles under her eyes. Tyler had on a suit that looked borrowed, his usual swagger replaced by something smaller, tighter. The mediator, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, called the session to order. No jury, no grand speeches, just facts laid out clean and simple. First came the bank representative, a manager I'd known for years. She explained the fraud alerts, the attempted unauthorized withdrawals, the forged signature on the loan application. Her voice was professional, matter of fact. She wasn't angry. She was just stating what happened. Tyler shifted in his chair every time she said the word fraud. Next came the asset protection documents. The mediator read key sections aloud. The language about shared funds, about authorization requirements, about what happens when someone attempts to use protected assets without proper consent. Melissa's shoulders sagged as the reality hit her. These weren't new rules I'd made up to hurt her. These were agreements she'd signed 6 years ago without bothering to understand what they meant. "Mrs. Coleman," the mediator said, "did you read these documents when you signed them?" Melissa looked at the table. "I trusted my husband to handle our finances." "And Mr. Coleman, did you explain the protection clauses to your wife?" "I told her they were standard asset protection measures for a second marriage. She said she didn't need the details." The mediator nodded and made a note. Then Tyler's lawyer, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried to make the case that Tyler had acted in good faith, that he'd assumed he had permission to use family funds for family needs. That's when they played the recording. The bank, it turned out, had recorded Tyler's conversation with the loan officer, standard procedure for large transactions. Tyler's voice came through the courtroom speakers, casual and confident. "Yeah, my stepdad's out of town, but he said it was fine. We do this kind of thing all the time." Then when the officer asked about the signature discrepancy, "Oh, he must have been rushing. You know how it is." The room went dead quiet. The mediator looked at Tyler. "Mr. Coleman, did your stepfather give you permission to use his signature?" Tyler glanced at his lawyer, then at Melissa, then at the floor. "Not exactly." "Did he give you permission to access the shared account for this purchase?" "Not specifically." "Did you tell the loan officer that he had?" Tyler's jaw tightened. We're family. I figured." "That's a yes or no question, Mr. Coleman." "Yes." The decision came swiftly after that. The assets would remain protected. Tyler would face consequences for the attempted fraud, community service, restitution, and a permanent mark on his credit report. The marriage dissolution would proceed, with the house and primary accounts remaining in my name per the original protection agreement. Melissa sat through it all like someone watching her life get reorganized by strangers. When it was over, people filed out in small groups, some nodding at me, others just shaking their heads at the whole mess. Tyler left first, shoulders hunched, that borrowed suit hanging loose. He didn't look back. Melissa lingered by the exit. When I walked past her, she said my name quietly. I stopped. "I didn't know he forged your signature," she said. "I swear I didn't know." I looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in months. She looked older, smaller, like someone who'd been carrying weight she didn't understand. "I know," I said, "but you didn't ask. You never asked what he was doing, how he was paying for things, where the money was coming from. You just assumed I'd handle it." She nodded, eyes filling. I was scared of losing him again. "You lost me instead." I walked past her, out into the cold afternoon air, and felt something lift off my chest that I'd been carrying for longer than I realized. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my small apartment near the canal trail, watching the sun set over Akron's skyline. The place is quiet in a way my old house never was. No tension humming under the floorboards, no eggshells to walk on, just the steady tick of the wall clock and the sound of my own breathing. Work goes on like it always has. Allied steel, 40-hour weeks, overtime when I want it. The guys know what happened. Word travels fast in a place like ours, but nobody makes it weird. A few have told me they respect what I did, standing up for myself, doing it the right way. Lance still saves me a seat at Murphy's on Friday nights. We talk about football, fishing, anything except lawyers and ex-wives. Sometimes he tells me I'm smiling more. I hadn't noticed, but he's right. I heard through the plant that Tyler moved to Tennessee, staying with some cousin, trying to start over. I wish him luck. The world's hard enough without carrying grudges. Melissa texts occasionally. Nothing dramatic, just hope you're well kinds of messages. I usually text back. Something simple. You too. Because I do hope she finds peace. I just can't be the one to give it to her anymore. Those 3 words I spoke in my kitchen, "I'm done here," weren't meant to punish anyone. They were meant to remind me that I still had a say in my own life, and that turned out to be enough.